The following is a paid presentation by Siniard Law Injury Attorneys, paid for by Siniard Law Injury Attorneys. The Siniard Law Show, answering your legal questions, featuring attorneys Tommy Siniard, Bart Siniard, and your host, Aaron Dacey. This is the Siniard Law Show.
Hello and welcome to the Siniard Law Show, where we invite your legal questions and educate you on various areas of the law. Siniard Law is a father-son personal injury firm right here in the Tennessee Valley, focused on giving back to the community through legal education. Siniard Law has again received recognition as a Tier 1 personal injury litigation firm by Best Lawyers in America. Bart Siniard's on the list of Best Lawyers in America 3 years running, and Tommy Siniard has more than 3 decades of recognition by Best Lawyers in America. Tonight, the topic is mental health and the law. Bart Siniard is joined tonight by guest attorney Kate Sketo. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to have Kate here, as I call her. Because she knows so much about this area of the law, and it's an important area of the law for everybody to understand. Why does this matter, and why is it important for people to know?
Well, there's so much stigma attached to mental health, and it's important to have the community support. This is where our legal system and compassion and individuals' constitutional rights all intersect. Mm-hmm. So everybody having a clear understanding about that helps the process work well. It helps professionals that practice in this area to stay within the law, and it helps quell any kind of concerns or mistrusts about this system.
Yeah, and Kate has a lot of experience working in the probate court system, mm-hmm. particularly conservatorships, guardianships. Anything about protecting the vulnerable, and where the law intersects, Kate knows it. She's actually a committee member for the Alabama State Committee on Conservatorships and Guardianships, right?
That's correct, yes.
So we're really glad to have her here to answer viewers' questions on this.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and get to our viewer questions. This one comes from Elizabeth. Please explain involuntary commitment, that process. My brother-in-law needs help, and I'm trying to walk my sister through this. What should she do?
Well, the first thing that she should do is reach out to the probate office, because we have a director of mental health there who will address and vet the screening process with the caller. And what's really important is that anyone can petition to begin this process and kick it off, as long as they have firsthand knowledge of the information that is going to form the basis for this request. So whether it's a neighbor, a family member, a medical provider, a teacher, anyone like that, as long as they have that firsthand knowledge, they can serve as the petitioner. So they would call into the probate court, and once they are vetted, that would require having concrete facts. So basically, where did the incident happen? When did it happen? And what are the details, so that we can include those allegations in the petition. And so a petitioning attorney would then file that information with the court, using, more times than not, some medical documents as well that have been secured, so that this is not something that what it's not is a witch hunt to some extent. People should not be afraid that they're going to be committed, because just stating vague facts such as they're not feeling well, or they're not right, or they need help, that's just simply not enough. So they have to be some concrete facts that are alleged. And then the petitioning attorney would assign by filing that into the probate court, and a hearing date would be set at that time.
What is an involuntary commitment? Kind of backtrack for me a little bit. I don't even know what that is.
Absolutely. So an involuntary commitment here in Madison County is when an individual is court ordered to participate in mental health treatment mm-hmm. without their consent.
Mm-hmm. In mental health, issues are so much more prevalent than one would think. I've seen a statistic that like 1 out of 3 Americans struggle with some type of mental health issue, and I'm sure you can back that up, seeing that. On a personal level, what is it like on the lawyer side, having to represent either the family members or the person who may be being committed?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have served as a guardian ad litem, a GAL, which is an advocate that the court will appoint if the respondent or the subject of the petition doesn't have an attorney. And I've also served as a petitioning attorney many times. And so really what's important to remember is everyone involved in this process is all on the same side. We all want that respondent to be in the best shape that they can possibly be in and to have access to any and all resources that our county in North Alabama can provide for them. And so many petitioners are nervous or hesitant to want to petition because they are afraid that their loved one or neighbor, friend, so forth will be frustrated or angry with them. But the sooner that they can intervene, the less likely that it will become a courtroom necessitated decision. So we have all kinds of alternatives here. We have therapy, we have crisis response units, we have things like that. So even though it's an important tool, it's usually a last resort to get all the way to an involuntary commitment.
We do want to remind you that if you have a question about this or any other legal topic, all you have to do is email us at questions@siniardlaw.com, or you can call us at 844-7000-LAW, and your question may be featured. So, Kate, for those who don't know, who would be a candidate for an involuntary commitment?
Sure. So there are some specific things that statutory requirements that really need to be met. The first is that individual would need to have a diagnosable mental illness. So they would spend some time in our behavioral health unit, several days in the hospital, where they are evaluated by a team of psychiatrists who spend time with them doing individual counseling and group therapy with them. And then they try to stabilize them through medications. If that individual is willing and has some insight, then we can progress to the next parts of the process. But so they have to have a diagnosable mental illness. That mental illness must interfere with their judgment to the point where they cannot make a rational decision on their own. Another element is that without intervention, they would continue to deteriorate. And so their condition would not improve without intervention. And then finally, the court takes it very seriously that whatever the court does order is going to be the least restrictive alternative available. So, constitutional rights, the protection of people's individual liberties, that is just crucial. And so if there's another less restrictive way to help get some intervention for these individuals, then that's what the court is going to try to do first.
We have another question about that later. Here's one, though, that comes from Mark, who writes, I'm worried about a neighbor of mine. He's been acting in ways that have me concerned for his safety. I don't want to get him in trouble, but he seems like he doesn't have anyone else in his life. No one ever comes by to check on him. Is there anything I can do to get him some help?
That's an issue I've seen. We do personal injury cases, we do nursing home abuse and neglect cases, and sometimes it's a non-family member, but a neighbor or a church member friend who's just trying to look out for them. What about in this setting? Like, can a neighbor, just like, a good neighbor, step in and try to do this?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, if they have good intentions, which the process has some built-in protections for that, including that GAL that's on the lookout and to advocate for what's in that respondent's best interest. But yes, a neighbor can absolutely do that. If the neighbor does not want to serve as a petitioner in that instance, they could help potentially get this individual to the hospital, where they would then have the emergency room, where they would have an evaluation done, and then the medical team there could serve as the petitioners and push it through to the court system. So there's lots of ways people don't, and I think it's important to say that having a mental illness is not a crime. This is not like being in a regular courtroom situation. Right. They've not done anything wrong, and hopefully we're trying to prevent serious harm from happening, because really the rule of thumb is there has to be a real and present danger for that individual. Yeah. So again, that neighbor would call into the probate office, run through with our mental health director what their concerns are, and if appropriate, the court would then guide them to the next steps in filing a petition and pairing them with an attorney to help them with that process.
All right, very good. Thank you both very much. When we return, Bart sits down with 48 Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis to discuss his almost 3 decades long career in broadcasting.
Harrison Brothers brings together the best of North Alabama. Our curated selection of local art, fine crafts, and gourmet food are great gifts for everyone on your shopping list. We carry books by local authors, and our toys pique a child's imagination. At Harrison Brothers, your purchases support artists and artisans right here in the Tennessee Valley. Located on Huntsville's Courthouse Square since 1897, Harrison Brothers is more than a store. It's a tradition.
Weather is a critical component of the newscast. Bart Siniard speaks with 48's Brad Travis about his career and how weather forecasting in the Tennessee Valley is unique.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm here tonight with somebody who really doesn't need an introduction. Brad Travis.
How's it going, Bart?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on the
you
show.
bet, man.
I'm good.
Yeah. Good to be
Thanks
here.
for coming on. I just, everybody sees you on TV almost every night, but I wanted to give viewers, a chance to, peek behind the curtain. Who is Brad Travis? All that good stuff. So I appreciate you doing this. Tell us, take us back in time. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And how'd you get into wanting to be a meteorologist?
Well, I'm from Kansas, southern Kansas, so right on the Oklahoma state line. Dad was a teacher. My mom was a nurse. And I can remember at an early age, we're talking when I was this tall, I'd have tornado sirens going off in the neighborhood, and I'd be riding my bike around. And I mean, back in the 70s, your parents hardly knew where you were half the time.
Right.
So,
right.
They turned the porch light on and you'd come home. But stuff like that, I was always fascinated with how the weather worked. I can still remember crawling into my parents' bed in the middle of the night, hearing the tornado sirens, and they just sounded different when I was a young kid. They were terrifying.
Yeah.
But I figured, the more I learned about that, the more I would be able to face it. And I was just fascinated. I was a kid that rearranged my room all the time. Mm-hmm. Every 6 months or so, I'd rearrange the room. I never liked everything to be the same. So I think I didn't want a job that I was going to show up at and it was going to be the same thing every day.
Yeah.
And I did that. When I was in college, I worked at a Crayola crayon factory.
Yeah.
And it was just the assembly line doing those packs of 64 crayons. So it was in that moment, I'm like, I think one of the best things you figure out when you're young, you're in your 20s, is what you don't want to do.
Right.
And then you find out what you really want to do at times. I mean, I'm lucky. There's a lot of people out there, they still don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And for some, college is overrated. I mean, you're going to figure out what you want to do. I came back from Saudi Arabia. I was over there. I was a cook in the Army. So my original
Desert Storm?
Yeah,
right?
Desert Storm back in 91. And my original plan was to get a double pension from the federal government. I was going to be a lieutenant. I was going to become a officer in the Air Force because the Army didn't have a lot of weather at that time. Of course, you have the artillery that needs kind of weather reports and stuff like that. But the Air Force and the Navy, they do a lot more weather. So I was gonna go back and do the Air Force, and I was gonna go to the National Weather Service. But the month I was graduating from college, University of Kansas, they had a hiring freeze in the Weather Service. So I had to figure out what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be on TV.
Yeah. But hey, that's worked out for you.
It's fit me quite well. I was like, that's not for me. But I got a call from someone I did an internship with and had to try out for the job. And I've got $5 an hour, 16 hours a week. So I had to work another full-time job just to pay the bills. And that lasted about 4 months. And then I got into TV and kept moving on and moving up. And
you've been in Huntsville a while. Where all have you been doing meteorology?
My first job on TV was in Topeka, Kansas. Mm-hmm. And it was like 6 months. I was on this 6-month pattern. Then I went to North Platte, Nebraska, which is the smallest television market in the country.
Okay.
That lasted 6 months. So then I came here and I started doing weekends and then moved up to mornings and then became the chief. So it was just one of those things. I just kept working myself up. And a lot of people are like, why did you stay here? I'm like, I love the area. Yeah. We raised a family here. And, it's a great weather market.
What is it like calling these significant weather events? Whether it was April 2011 or, some of the big ice storms we've had in the past.
I realize those are the big moments that kind of define you as a meteorologist in your community. And I realize I'm not always going to be right. But people want an answer. They want to know just like this, the developing winter storms we've had, a lot of people just like to share the model data. I'm like, here's what I really think is going to happen. So you really go into the science of everything And you realize you're basically talking to an audience that immediately is going to question something.
Yeah.
You're always going to get, I'll believe that when I see it, or must be nice to get paid and be wrong 100% of the time, or whatever. I mean, I get all those little jokes. Yeah. And I'll be on Facebook, I'm like, man, this guy's my friend and he's talking like this. What's going on? But I mean, people want answers. The biggest challenge now is people want to know exactly what's going to happen. They want to know because they want to cancel a birthday, or they want to move a wedding, they want to move a sporting event. So there's a lot of weight that comes with that, to be honest, especially when you get into the severe weather aspect. Because the last thing I want to do is overhype something, and then people like, oh, he said that the last time. There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's a
you don't want to be
challenge.
the boy that cried wolf,
right?
But you also don't want to undercall something, and then people be caught flat-footed in some disaster.
Yeah, and being a first alert station. The research shows people are willing to accept that you may be wrong, but you just have to be upfront and honest about the possibilities and things, and let them make a decision on what they think they should do.
Yeah. Tell us, have you ever had a moment in your career that was just like really meaningful, like you were able to call something maybe others didn't see and it helped somebody out there?
I've had several of those. The most recent was the Killingsworth Cove tornado.
Okay.
And I've met this gentleman. They had a mobile home, and it was like at the base of Killingsworth Cove. They were probably 4 minutes from the storm shelter.
Yeah.
And he said something about your voice when you said, and wait a minute, I don't like how this is coming together, made him give pause and said, we need to go to the storm shelter. And his house was blown probably 300 yards into the field, just destroyed. So, I mean, that's kind of an amazing moment when you realize you are having that impact. I know there's some days when you feel like you're not. Yeah. Especially when you miss a big forecast and then you get pounded on, and social media makes it so much worse because everybody's just typing away. But it's those moments that make up for the others.
Last question, the Bumble meter.
Oh, the Bumble meter, yeah.
Everybody loves that on Facebook.
They do.
What's the background on that?
Several years back, I wanted a way to let everyone in the audience know this is really going to happen. Because there's so many times when you lead up to an event and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's too warm, it just faded away. And so those are the worst moments for me. And, you know, they get the pitchforks out and things like that. But I was like, when I'm highest confident that it is going to snow, I changed my profile picture to the Abominable Snowman. And it was because I love that movie, the Christmas movie, with him and Rudolph Shiny New Year, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and I said, you know what, I'm going to do a Bumble meter, because everybody's sharing these models and nobody really knows for sure if it's really going to snow.
Right.
So it kind of keeps them in suspense on what to expect. So you kind of go through. Social media is a mess with the number of stuff that gets shared. It started with hurricane season, showing hurricanes that never happen, and it relates to winter storms too. So I think some people get it. It's their cue to, hey, this is really happening.
Yeah.
So that's the story behind that.
Well, Brad, we appreciate all you do, and thank you for being on the show.
Bart. Man, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Aaron, back to you.
When the Siniard Law Show returns, we'll get to more of your questions, and we'll tell you how you can get a free newsletter from Siniard Law.
I got sandwiched between an 18-wheeler and a truck. During the accident, I lost my left leg. I chose Siniard Law because my granddad knew they had a great reputation. They were very knowledgeable. They were very sweet. We had a connection. They pretty much treated us like family. I would definitely recommend Siniard Law because they are caring and they will help you get what you deserve. If you've been injured, call Siniard Law.
Welcome back to the Siniard Law Show. If you would like to sign up for Siniard Law's newsletter, which provides free monthly legal tips, just scan the QR code and be sure to sign up at siniardlaw.com. Now let's get back to you, our viewers, and your questions. Our next question comes to us from Olivia. She writes, when someone is committed, what actually happens next? How long are they typically held? And how does that person eventually return home?
Great question. So our law here in Alabama requires a prompt judicial oversight and hearing. So that individual would have a hearing, and that hearing would consist of the petitioner, the petitioner's attorney, the respondent themselves and their attorney, that GAL, also the judge, and a professional from the medical side of things, so from the hospital.
You said the respondent?
Yes.
That's the person who has the mental health issue, right?
Correct.
How do they actually appear in court? Do they actually come, or is it they attend by telephone, or
no?
What does that look like?
What happens is if they are in the hospital, so that petition also includes the right for them to be picked up by the sheriff's office.
Okay.
So there's a hold order that is part of it. So if they are not an individual that's already in the emergency room or on the behavioral health floor, then the deputies are authorized to go out. They will make some attempts to pick that individual up. So as the petitioning attorney, it's important that I include details about potential firearms, anything that might put law enforcement in danger, and let them know what they're walking into. And they will make several attempts to pick this individual up in a very calm way, explain to them what's going on. Because again, this individual has their own rights. They have a right to be made aware of the hearing. They have a right to appear at the hearing. They have a right to present evidence at the hearing. They have a right to cross-examine the petitioner and petitioner's witnesses at the hearing if they choose to. They also have a right to not appear or speak at the hearing if they choose not to. Yeah. So to answer your question, Bart, is once all of it funnels into that individual, the respondent, getting to the hospital for an evaluation. Yeah. Titers are pulled to see if they've got anything else on board in their system that might be interfering or causing them to present as if they have a mental health illness if they really don't, such as a UTI or something like that. Yeah. So the doctors are looking for medical issues. Also, dementia is not a mental illness. And so if an individual has dementia, this may not be the appropriate path for them.
Gotcha.
So when they have a hearing date, they're notified of that, and it happens while they are still at the hospital. That happens in our county by Zoom, actually, because there used to be a courtroom in the hospital and everyone would appear there, but after COVID, it's now done all by Zoom, which is helpful because sometimes these folks don't live in Madison County. Madison County has jurisdiction over people if they are in the county when the incidents occur, and then that gives our probate court jurisdiction over them for this process. So then they would have the hearing, and the outcome of the hearing usually goes one of three ways typically. Either the person is stabilized and it's recommended that they get dismissed. They go home and follow up with their own private care and oversight from their physicians. The other extreme is an involuntary commitment. The state of Alabama can hold them for up to 150 days. That typically is much longer than they are needing to be held. The goal is to stabilize these individuals and get them back to their lives, jobs, families, and things like that. But there's a middle of the road option called AOT, Assisted Outpatient Therapy. And with that, a caseworker is assigned and partners with that individual, the respondent, to continue to seek treatment. They are also, they are required to come back into probate court, I think about once a month, and they will meet with our probate judge to make sure that they don't need any other resources that potentially our community could provide. Mentorship, potentially housing, moving back into education if that was interrupted by this process, because as long as you're 19, you can be part of this process.
Interesting. Here's another email question from Diane. She writes, I'm dealing with a loved one who is struggling with mental health issues, but they're refusing any kind of help. Is involuntary commitment the only option available? This seems very aggressive and scary.
Yeah, the phrase involuntary commitment does carry this connotation with it, like you're being locked up in a padded room, and I guess sometimes that may be what it is. Is there anything maybe less than an involuntary commitment?
Yes.
Like what is that?
So absolutely. And just to put your mind at ease and possibly the viewers, you're not in a padded cell. You're in a hospital room on our behavioral health floor at Huntsville Hospital. And you are free to usually move around, typically to move around the ward upstairs. Due to elopement issues, sometimes the doors are locked so that people cannot just leave until the court allows them to leave. But
it's not as scary as a lot of people may envision.
Yes. They've got a day room,
or
television, they have a phone, they're allowed to call their loved ones. But a question I do get a lot of times from petitioners is they want to call up there, and they certainly can, but due to HIPAA, they are not always going to be given information about their loved one. So they need to understand that this process too. These individuals are seen as adults in the state of Alabama, and so again, their rights have to be protected throughout this entire time.
I'm just off in a tangent here. Are there multiple medical facilities in the Madison County area that handle these type of patients in this process, or is it just one?
Well, our county has a contract currently with Wellstar Behavioral Health, and so they are the providers for that. An individual can go to if they're concerned about their own mental health or their families are. Wellstone takes walk-ins every morning at 8 o'clock for assessments, and they do prescriptions and medication oversight based on your income level. So there is, that process. But the involuntary commitment process is really for when things like that fail, or they're not working or aren't going to work in a specific instance. And
it's when people are really refusing for whatever reason to help themselves.
Correct.
Because of maybe a severe mental illness, there may be drugs involved. I'm sure you've seen that some.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. So the main thing that is important throughout this process is how much insight this individual has, the respondent. Are they able to participate in their own wellness journey? Because the more insight that they have, the better prepared they are to take over without court oversight for all of that. But a lot of times people just will have a break. Sometimes they'll change medications and it doesn't go well. Sometimes they'll get a medication that just didn't sit well with them, and so they'll have a break. Or a lot of times they've decided they don't want to be compliant with their prescribed medications. Maybe they don't like the way they feel or don't feel like they can operate as their normal selves on the medications, and so they'll choose to stop them without their doctor's authority.
What does it look like phasing it out? Let's say somebody's involuntarily committed. They're committed to a psychiatric facility. They're seeing a psychiatrist. They're getting medications, and they start to show improvement. How does the court system slowly back away and allow this person to go back into society?
Yes, great question, because the court system does not want to be in the position of continuing to have oversight, if at all possible. So throughout this process, the respondents also have the right to seek modification of the orders, and they can ask for discharge if their condition has improved. So there is constant file and medical document review by the people at Wellstar to ensure that these people the individuals and respondents aren't getting more care and are being restricted more than they need to be.
I got you.
So if someone is potentially in the involuntary commitment side of things and they begin to improve, they can slide over into the outpatient therapy portion of it, and then ultimately just be discharged completely.
That's the whole point of it, to try and get them back to life.
That's right. Yes.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
We appreciate it. For all this information on mental health and the law, and again, email us or call if you'd like to get any further information. If you want to, you can email us at questions@siniardlaw.com, or you can call our voicemail line at 844-7000-LAW. We'll see you next Sunday night after the late news for the Siniard Law Show.
The preceding was a paid presentation by Siniard Law Injury Attorneys, paid for by Siniard Law Injury Attorneys.